middle of a 2-week UFC break. There has been so much news that has came out. We are not taking a break. Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is the Golden Octagon MMA podcast, episode number 5. I am Matt Anderson, and on the right side of your screen, you have the defending pick champ of the week, Dorian Rose. How are you doing today, my man?
We're doing good, man. We're doing good. We just had some snow come through earlier and got about 6-7 inches, so we had to get out there and play in the snow because it's been a long time since we got something like that. So now I'm getting pumped up and getting ready for some fight talk.
Yeah, I'm ready. We did take off Wednesday, but that's just because there was no fights this past weekend. It is Sunday today. This will come out on a Monday, but there were no fights this past weekend, so we figured we would just take the Wednesday off. But we are back here on Sunday to talk to you about just our previous thoughts over like the past few weeks and the news that everyone wants to hear about, the fight announcements, all of that good stuff. But before we get started with today's show, I'm going to give you a quick rundown on just what to look out for. Up first on today's show, we are going to be talking about the 155 division, Dorian. You are going to give me 2 fights. One, your favorite fight for the sport. This is your fight for the sport that you think needs to happen for the 155 division itself, and then one fight, the biggest spectacle that you can get in the 155 division. So this is going to be just 2 fights, like the biggest fight and the best fight for the division. And then up next, we are going to talk about Conor McGregor. Who is next for him, and why do you think this is next for him? You're going to pretend you're Dana White. You're going to shave your head bald for one day, and then you're going to pretend that you are the man himself, Scrooge McDuck, as Brendan Schaub says, and you're going to say, what do you do with Conor McGregor next? Do you put him in a fight to try to build an up-and-comer, or do you just put him against one of these other people on their way out of the sport and just see what he can do there? And then, which will lead us perfectly into the rest of the 4 contenders in the 155 division itself. Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, and Michael Chandler. Man, Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, those 2 names, I get mixed up all the time so much, but I do try my best. And then everyone's favorite topic over the past week, I don't know. I wasn't really sure if we were going to talk about this, but you know what? People are doing my man wrong. Jake Paul versus Ben Askren. We got to talk about it. People are giving Ben Askren no chance facing Jake Paul. And then lastly, we are just going to talk about the fight news, all the recent fight announcements, everything coming up, and just basically anything else that you want to talk about that involves fighting. But that is all that we are going to talk about today. Before we get started, if you guys wouldn't mind, please put a thumbs up on this video. Show your support. Let's see if we can get all the way up to 50 likes this time, Dorian. We've gotten close to 20. And then once again, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, what are you doing? Help us out. Help us grow. Subscribe to the channel. That is all that we ask. But that is all. So we are going to jump into the first topic of the day. Alright, Dorian, up first on today's show, the 155 division. Sport versus spectacle. You're going to give me the biggest fight for the division, and then you're going to give me the best fight for the division. So take that how you want it. So I'm going to let you go up first. Let me know what you think. You're going to give me your sport first, and then your spectacle. So go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to go for the sport first, and I got to say, just for the hardcore MMA fans, the hardcore UFC fans, I would really love to see a fight between Justin Gaethje and Eddie Alvarez, or Eddie Alvarez, Michael Chandler. Yeah, that was I was going to throw him in as a reference, and then all of a sudden I got him jumping back into the UFC when he's won. But Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. Okay. It is just for all the reasons that how Michael Chandler got that finish against Dan Hooker last week. He's very heavy-handed. Gaethje didn't take too much damage in the Khabib fight. He just ended up getting choked out. So I think he can make a relatively quick turnaround, especially if he knows an undisputed title shot is looming. I think both of their fighting styles, Gaethje's super hard leg kicks. You know, when Michael Chandler was in Bellator before, he had actually lost a fight due to leg kicks because that perennial nerve in his leg went bad, and he actually ended up losing the fight due to that. So I think the style matchup is great. Michael Chandler is definitely capable of getting into a brawl, and he's very heavy-handed, and I would love to see if Justin Gaethje, who's got a rock-solid chin, would be able to take the shots from Michael Chandler. So I think those two stylistically, what Justin Gaethje is number 2 in the division, Michael Chandler is number 4 now. I heard Justin Gaethje do an interview with Brett Okamoto the other day, and he alluded to the fact that Michael Chandler's first fight in the UFC, he didn't want to fight him in his first fight because he didn't have anything that was worth Justin Gaethje's time. Now he's got the number 4 ranking, and Justin Gaethje knows that if he can beat a guy like Michael Chandler, who's surgeon, he can possibly get a title shot in his next fight. So I think for the sport, for the hardcores, stylistically, and what makes sense, I would actually like to see Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. And did you want me to go ahead for the other one as well?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So I think the biggest spectacle would be Conor versus Nate Diaz. And it's just for the reasons that Conor's a brand. Nate Diaz is essentially his own brand. I know, they had questioned whether Nate Diaz was a big draw, but when he was the co-main event to DC Stipe 2, I know the crowd went crazy, and the pay-per-view sales also did very well due to a major portion of Nate Diaz actually coming back and fighting. So he's got a big following behind him as well as Conor. It's a trilogy fight, so it's to decide who's the better fighter between the two, and I think that what Nate Diaz can do, and I heard somebody talking about this the other day, and it was a really good point about how Conor and Nate match up. I still think some of the humble approach from Conor has sort of hindered him in his performances. I think a little bit in the Dustin fight, and I think that's why he tried to throw the little jab of he's going to finish him in under 60 seconds, because what Conor was doing before was putting more pressure on him than he could have ever handled before. And when he was doing that in his early featherweight run, he was coming out on top, and he was putting more pressure on himself than any opponent ever could. Now he seems like he's a little more complacent in his fight style. He's a little more humble, a little more not as of a trash-talking approach. Nate Diaz is not going to let him be like that. Like, Nate Diaz does not care about Conor McGregor being humble at all. They're going to be in the press conference. They're going to be flicking each other off. Nate Diaz is not going to take his crap. He's going to make jokes about Conor McGregor playing touch butt with the dorks in the park, and Conor's going to sit there and call him stupid and say that he can't count to 10. And
my favorite line ever in that exact press conference, he said, Nate Diaz throws up gang signs with one hand and makes balloon animals with the other hand. That was the best thing I had ever heard. I laughed so hard. Like, that was spot on. That was perfect.
Yeah, man. So that's why I would really love that fight, is because Nate Diaz is not going to let Conor McGregor be humble. He's going to go at him, and I think it's going to bring out the best in McGregor, because I think when McGregor fights with that chip on his shoulder, just that fiery, the trash talking type, and he doesn't have to necessarily go into the trash talking that he did with Habib and talking about his family and talking about his religion and things like that. But just keep it within the sport. Nate Diaz making fun of his training teammates, and then Conor McGregor making fun of him being a nice guy outside of the octagon and things like that. And I would love to see that fight as far as a spectacle for the sport, because I think that's going to draw the most pay-per-view buys.
Okay, so you think Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz at 155 is the biggest fight for the 155 division to draw the most eyes to the division. I can't. That is one that I would love to see. I don't know if we're going to see Diaz at 155 anymore, though. That's what I'm saying.
He was rumored to come back there at one point at 155, and he's been throwing jabs at McGregor and Dustin Poirier on Twitter, and basically saying that he would be about to smoke and that he would want to go back down. So if I'm to hold him to his word, and it was rumored that he was supposed to, I think he was offered a Justin Gaethje fight. I don't know if that was really set in stone, but I heard Gaethje in an interview the other day as well with Bray Okamoto. He had said that he was offered the fight, or Nate Diaz was offered the fight, but some things fell through and it didn't really happen. So if Nate Diaz is to return to 155, that's what I would love to see the most.
It would definitely be a great fight for the division. I would enjoy it. You obviously just said you would enjoy it. If I'm going to say my opinion, I'm saying the best fight for the division itself right now, for the sport, for the hardcores, I'm going Dustin Poirier versus Charles Oliveira. We have to get a champion in there. Like, what are we doing? How long are we going to go without a 155-pound champion? I believe those are the two dudes that deserve to be fighting for the championship right now. How do I say this? Like, so Michael Chandler has shown that he deserves to be in the UFC, but I don't think that he's there yet, fighting for a championship yet. So that's the only reason why I'm not throwing him versus Poirier in there. And we've already seen Poirier versus Gaethje. So to that being said, Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier is the #1 fight for the hardcores that I think we need to see happen. Like, we need to get a 155 champion there, as I just said. And then for the spectacle, I'm going to throw something crazy out there. Are you ready for it? The biggest fight for the 155 division. I'm going Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier, #3. We need to see this. It is hot off the press. The iron is hot. Conor McGregor believes that he already knows what he has done wrong, and he knows what he has to do right to beat Dustin Poirier in the rematch. He's already been nagging John Kavanagh to try to get the rematch, with our training and all of that. I believe that is the biggest fight for the 155 division right now. I believe that would draw the most eyes in on you. Everyone would be watching Conor once again, as if they already weren't. But are we going to see him get beat again? That's what the big question is going to be. And I do believe that Dustin Poirier would probably be the favorite in that fight. And I believe it gives a chance for Conor McGregor to shock the world again. That is my thoughts on the biggest fight for the sport and the biggest spectacle in the division. What do you have to say about my picks there, Dorian?
I'm surprised with the Conor and the Dustin one, just because I know Conor won the first round, but Dustin finished him so devastatingly. I almost feel that Conor needs to work his way back up to that fight. And I think that you might be risking a lot more than just a loss with Conor if you're to run him in there too quickly against Dustin, and Dustin beats him again, because although Conor is a brand of his own, these losses are they're going to eventually add up to his stock, and his stock is going to eventually end up dropping tremendously. So I think as far as the sport goes, I think it's very surprising that you chose Conor and Dustin, because I chose Dustin to win the
spectacle.
second fight, so I believe
spectacle.
Yes, spectacle wise. Okay. But I'm surprised because that matchup is not a favorable matchup for Conor, and if he's to lose that fight, I think that can very much end up being a fatal blow to his career. So
right now you think Nate Conor 3 draws more pay-per-views than Poirier Conor 3?
Yeah, absolutely.
At this exact day, fresh off of what just happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
I don't know.
He's a bigger brand than Dustin Poirier is. Dustin Poirier is a well-known fighter amongst MMA fans and UFC fans, and there are some casual fans who know him. But there are people who, when they hear the name Nate Diaz, they know who that is. When I tell them who Dustin Poirier is, there's not regular people that I talk to.
But it's fresh off of what my only thought is it's fresh off of it just happening, right? And so everyone knows Conor just fought, right? So they now know who Dustin Poirier is, and they know that he just now beat Conor. I just think if you strike while the iron is hot, Dustin Conor 3 is like the biggest fight you can make for the division right now, just to get the most eyes on it. So what do you have to say about my Poirier versus Oliveira? I think this needs to happen for the sport. Let me know what you think about that.
Yeah, now that one I actually agree with, just because those are the two most deserving contenders. So I actually didn't have too much of a gripe with that one at all. I actually think those are the two most deserving guys. You know, Charles Oliveira's on an 8-fight win streak, 8 or 9-fight win streak.
I don't know.
And Dustin's clearly the best guy, and he's clearly the uncrowned champ with Habib relinquishing his title. So I wouldn't have a problem with that at all.
Okay. All right, so that being said, that's going to be all for the first topic. I actually changed it up here. We're going to talk about Conor's next opponent. You're going to pretend you're Dana White for this next few minutes, and you're going to tell me who Conor's next opponent is and why you think this is Conor's next opponent. Let me know what you do with him. Shave your head bald. Do what you got to do. Let me know.
Man, so I could have went a couple different ways with this one. You know, I could have just beat back on the drum of Nate Diaz, but I decided to switch it up this time. I know the matchup that everybody has been talking about is the Tony Ferguson fight, because they used to share the same management. And I know that Tony has always said that the management team has kind of saved Conor from him for the last few years and things of that nature. So that could build up to some pretty good pre-fight hype. But I think one of the guys that you might want to match him up with is probably either Paul Felder or Dan Hooker. And I think it's kind of because Conor needs a win right now. Conor needs to get himself back into the winning column, because I believe that is he 3-3 in his last 6 fights? I believe he's 3-3. So sort of what I was saying about with Conor's last fight, I think that he needs to try to get a win under his belt, because he's going to end up losing a lot of momentum if he ends up going into another fight with Dustin Poirier and he ends up losing again. I think these losses are going to start eventually adding up. One of the good things about Conor is that he does wear his losses well. He stays for the interviews. He talks to everybody. He explains what happens. Just like with Dustin, he didn't make any excuses, so you can always commend him for that. But I don't know if I want to put him in a Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira type fight and have him lose all his momentum. And I think he needs a win. And I think stylistically with Paul Felder, that they're both the strikers. Paul Felder is not going to go for many takedowns at all. Now, one thing he will do is throw some heavy leg kicks, so I would like to see how Conor could respond to that. But Paul Felder is a kickboxer at heart, so it'll be a striker's delight when it comes to that type of fight. I know that Conor McGregor has taken jabs at Paul Felder for calling himself the Irish Dragon when he's not even Irish, he's German. And I know Paul Felder has really taken some issues with that, so I think that could also be some good pre-fight hype there. And I think Conor really needs to get a win. So I think the fight that I would like the most is between Conor McGregor and Paul Felder, or if Paul Felder just so happens to retire, maybe a Dan Hooker, but I would really like to see the Paul Felder fight.
So your fight that you want to see Conor McGregor fight in next is him versus Paul Felder. That would be a good one. You are right. They have chirped back and forth at each other on Twitter for a while now, and in like interviews, things of that nature. My pick is just one that I've thought about a lot. I've listened to Luke Thomas give his thoughts about it as my dog is trying to lay on my camera again. Hey man, go over there. I'm telling you, this dude loves to lay on my camera stand. I don't know what it is, and then my whole thing just now shifts. So as he's laying down, okay, so we're good now. Back to what I was saying. Conor's next opponent, I listen to Luke Thomas talk about why Khabib retired, and I'm taking that into this consideration. So Luke Thomas said that Khabib retired because he is trying to fill that role that his dad had. So that being said, I think the next fight that you make, if I'm Dana White, is Islam Makhachev versus Conor McGregor, because I believe that Khabib like retired, so Islam could be the champion and take over his dad's spot. Islam is that next dude right from the area. Like the UFC is trying to build him, that whole area is trying to build him. I believe the next fight you make is a win or lose for Conor, and he's either gonna ride the train and get Khabib back out of retirement, or he's out the door, he's done fighting. We won't see him anymore. I think we need to see that. That if I'm Dana White, that's what I'm doing. Islam Makhachev versus Conor McGregor. We're either going to get Khabib out of retirement after you beat his prodigy almost, or goodbye Conor McGregor. It was fun while it lasted. You earned hundreds, billions of dollars at this point now. Thanks for the ride. We'll see you later. That's my point of view.
Man, I feel like you're really trying to make Conor McGregor a sacrificial lamb for somebody, because I think that Dustin Poirier is a tough matchup, and I think Islam Makhachev, although Paul Felder doesn't have the greatest name, Islam Makhachev doesn't have a big name, and he's a tougher matchup for Conor McGregor than Paul Felder would be due to his grappling. So I think just with that alone, I think that would be a very tough fight. I think Khabib is just done. I think at this point, Conor just wants to be active and wants to be busy. I know Dana really wants that fight, but I know that after the loss to Poirier for McGregor, that Dana has already, kind of been down on himself because he feels like Khabib is done. And I even heard him say that, Khabib's more done than Dana wants him to be. Dana's trying to basically pressure him back into fighting. So I think matching Conor up with Islam, I think that's just... You're either trying to get Islam a title shot, so that way he could beat McGregor and get a title shot, or you're just trying to make McGregor a sacrificial lamb, because I don't see that being a good matchup for him at all.
My point exactly is, where's Conor McGregor at? Is he actually going to do this anymore? And does he have the will to train every bit of what he should be doing, having accomplished everything that he was trying to accomplish? I think that I'm actually glad that you asked, or that you pointed it out like that, because my point of view on this is Conor McGregor he's already won, man. Why would you? I understand that you're in a sport and you're going to be fighting like these other guys, but at the same time, it's like it's almost like you fighting a kid. Like, you've already accomplished way more. Like, it's almost like, are you even fighting them, or are you just doing it for fun though? That is that is. I don't even know the words that I'm trying to find at this point. He doesn't have the will that he once had when he was that broke kid. He's accomplished everything. He has everything. What else are you doing aside just doing this because you like it anymore? That passion and that fire isn't there. You have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. You have all kinds of extra plans now. You don't this isn't your only option anymore. So that being said, I think that he needs to figure out is he actually going to do this, or is he just going to be, we'll just come around from time to time and fight Nate Diaz, or just fight probably Diego Sanchez at this point, a Tony Ferguson, who knows. But like I said, man, I think we're going to get someone to build their name off of him, or we're going to go back to the main goal of he's going to beat Islam Makhachev, and then we're going to draw what the original plan was, get Khabib out of retirement for one last time.
Yeah, but do you think Conor McGregor is in the point of his career almost like a Chuck Liddell type, where you're just feeding him to younger fighters and basically having to make a name off of him?
I don't. That's the thing. If he has this passion and this I'm going to be the champion again, then he should be Islam Makhachev, right?
Man, I mean, if you ask ask a lot of people around, like, I know Cormier's his teammate, but a lot of people are going to say that Islam's going to be champ soon.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think Islam's going to be a very tough matchup for him, especially with the wrestling. I mean, I just don't think Conor's going to be able to defend it. I think he'll be able to defend it for a good portion of the time, but I think Islam, a lesser-known name than anybody in the top 10 in the lightweight division, and possibly the toughest matchup that you could possibly put McGregor against.
Man, that is just the fight that I'm like, all right, dude, like, let's see it. If I'm Dana White, that's what I'm making. Let's see it, man. Are you in it or are you done? Let's go. That's the fight that I'm making if I'm Dana White. He fights, what, one time every 2-3 years at this point. He's on a 6 months medical suspension, so we're not going to see him again at least until the very end of the year this year. So, I mean, dude, it's like, why is he doing this anymore is my main question. That's what I'm saying. Feed him to this next guy that you guys think is probably going to be the champion, or we're going to see what he's actually made of. If I'm Dana White, that's what I'm doing.
But don't you want to see him in more fun fights, like a Nate Diaz or maybe even I mean, if you're going to feed him to somebody, I would say at least.
Do you think
there was rumors of him with the Masvidal fight? I mean, at least if you're going to try to feed him to somebody, do that fight.
Do those fights go away if he loses to Islam though? I don't think so.
It's probably not. It's probably not as interesting, especially if he's on a 2-fight losing streak. If he loses to Poirier, Islam, is he even in the top 15? What is he, like 14, 13? So if Conor McGregor loses to the number 13 ranked guy in the division, I mean, what is that going to do for his stock? I mean, he's going to fall all the way back down. And, I mean, necessarily the Nate Diaz fight doesn't go away, but I don't see it being bigger than what it would be right now if he's to come off of a loss against Islam.
So Islam is ranked number 14 currently. But, man, I don't know. If it's cutting time, how much money does the UFC pay Conor McGregor every year to just basically, I don't know, to just use his name at that point? Like, you know, like he's an expensive guy. They have to pay him a whole lot of money. And at this point, dude, who's he going to beat? Like, if everyone's tossing out names like Paul Felder, Tony Ferguson, and those are like well-known guys, but at the same time, like, it's like we all know that those guys are also at the end of their career. They've also all said that they only have a few fights left. Like, man, I think it's kind of getting to the point for Conor, you know, to just think about like hanging it up, man. And for the UFC to just be like, okay, like, who's the next up-and-comer? Like, is for sure going to beat this guy? Oh, this guy's like Khabib. Oh, Khabib's this, like, trains with Khabib. Oh, look at that. And I do think in the slim chance that Conor does, you know, beat Islam, there is or not in the slim chance that he beats him. I think if he beats him, there is a slim chance that we are getting Khabib back out of retirement. And I think that is the brain of Dana White as well. I'm not sure. That's just how I would think if I was running the UFC. I want to see what this guy's made of. I would have already probably bankrupted the UFC, but it is okay. I'm just putting together fights that I would want to see. We're going to see who's the toughest. We're going to see what people are made of. Anything else on this topic, Dorian?
Nah, I think we pretty much vetted everything out. I just know from this point you want Conor McGregor to be a sacrificial lamb for the company.
All right, so as we move along to the next topic, Dorian is telling me that I think Conor McGregor is the next sacrificial lamb for the UFC. I do not believe so, but we are going to move right along. We are going to be talking about the other 4 contenders in the division: Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, and Michael Chandler. Dorian, how do we match these contenders up? Like, Dustin Poirier has already said that he doesn't want to fight Michael Chandler for, like, the title. We've already seen Poirier versus Gaethje. There's just so much kind of going on there. Like, just give me, like, your thoughts, like, about the division. Those top 4, what do we do with them?
I do think the top two matchups that we had, I think that's what you do. I think you go ahead and go with Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier for the title, for the vacant title, since Khabib's going to go ahead and relinquish it. I just think as far as who's the most deserving within the division, Charles Oliveira is on an 8-fight win streak. And I think at this point, besides the Khabib loss, Dustin Poirier's been on an absolute roll. And then, just putting the exclamation point on finishing Conor McGregor. I mean, I just think that he's in the position right now to where he's the uncrowned king in the division. And I think what you do next for the title fight, I think you had to do those two, Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier. Those two are the most deserving. And then I believe for who you settle for, who's the next challenger after that fight would be to do Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler. Both those guys have a lot of momentum. Even though also Justin Gaethje had the loss to Khabib, he was still had a lot of hype behind him coming off of the Tony Ferguson win, so he's still regarded as one of the top guys in the division. And then Michael Chandler coming off the really good performance that he had against Dan Hooker. I also agree that I don't think he's ready for a title shot just yet. But I think if he goes in there against a guy like Justin Gaethje, who's been at the top of the division for a little bit now, if he's to go in there and do anything similar what he did to Dan Hooker, or if he just goes in there and beats Gaethje, because Gaethje's also a really good fighter, I think if he's to go in there and be able to beat Gaethje, I think that can also propel him into a title shot. And I think for Gaethje, I think really all he needs is one win, and I think he's right back into title contention as well. So what better for him to do than to steal all the momentum from Michael Chandler that he got from the Dan Hooker fight? So I think as far as the division goes, I think you had to match those four guys up. I think you go Dustin Poirier versus Charles Oliveira for the title, and then you go Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler, and you set that up for the next title challenger.
Okay. I agree with your fights. I don't know if I award the championship. Just to throw a little curveball in here from the third topic, I'm going to change from the first topic. I'm going to say that those fights still should happen, but we don't award the championship yet. We have this as a tournament, and we put the two winners together and let them fight for the championship. I know the UFC doesn't ever do this. This isn't Bellator. But man, would it be fun. Tell me about how much fun it would be if we got a tournament in here. I do believe that those top two guys do deserve to fight for the championship, but a tournament would definitely be fun there.
Yeah, no, a tournament would actually be really fun, and I think that would actually, if you put them on a pay-per-view together, or if you put them on the same card to fight one another, so if you put Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler on maybe the co-main event, and then you do Dustin Poirier versus Charles Oliveira for the main event, or if you do the fights kind of 1 week out from one another, so that way you can kind of schedule the next fight relatively sooner than you would if it was 2 or 3 months apart. I think that would actually be a really good idea, but I think Dana's kind of against the tournaments just from the standpoint of he doesn't want to feel like he's copying Scott Coker and Bellator's philosophy of settling their champions and things like that. So I think Dana's going to kind of go his own route. But just the concept-wise of the tournament itself, I actually really like the idea.
I know. It would be a great way to figure out who is the best out of these four, and who knows, even do and have a loser's match for who's the interim champ, because we know by the end of the year there's already going to be another interim champ for the 155-pound championship. Just go ahead and award the little second belt for the year. So I guess that is all that we're going to talk about for the 155-pound division. Our first three topics, we're covering it. Anything else that you want to say, about anyone in this top echelon of the 155 pound division, before we move along to Jake Paul versus Ben Askren?
Really just that this division is loaded, and I'm really excited to see what's going to, unveil within the next few months if Khabib goes ahead and relinquishes his title. I'm excited to see how things unfold. Same.
Okay, so that is going to be all for the 155-pound division, and we are going to move along to what I don't even know why we're talking about this, Dorian. Jake Paul versus Ben Askren. You messaged me and asked me if I wanted to talk about this, and I didn't at first, but I said yeah. But then over the past few days, man, people are, not giving Ben Askren any credit at all. This man, think about all the punches that this man has absorbed in his lifetime, and they think that Jake Paul is just going to go in there and just knock him clean out. I just don't think so. I don't really think that he's going to get knocked out quick like that. Ben Askren knows how to take a punch. Think about all the times he was hit by Eddie Alvarez and Robbie Lawler. This man has been hit a lot, and I just don't believe that Jake Paul is going to go in there. A guy that has 2 professional fights, and he's going to starch Ben Askren that has over 20 wins on his professional MMA record. Give me your thoughts.
I was actually surprised to see the matchup. I know that early on, there were rumors that they were going to end up fighting, and I know that Ben Askren ended up releasing a video on his Instagram, and I know he had said that he was offered the fight, but something had fallen through. So I really thought each person was using it for, personal promotion. So I thought that Ben Askren might have had some wrestling clinic that he was doing or a new gym that he was opening, and Jake Paul might have had another fight that he was going to announce, but was trying to use some fight hype off of Ben Askren to get some notoriety for his next fight. But seeing it actually come together is what really surprised me. And it really surprised me to see Ben Askren actually give the guy a chance. Now, I know that Ben Askren is a professional or was a professional MMA fighter, and he's fought a lot of tough dudes. Like, he's fought Douglas Lima, he's fought Robbie Lawler. Of course, he got knocked out by Masvidal, but in his Bellator run, he fought some pretty solid fighters when he was over there. And he fought some solid fighters and won, not as to the caliber of Bellator or UFC, and I know that he's taken some shots before, but he was also in a fighting realm to where he can control the fight a little bit more with his grappling and things like that. Ben Askren had never had to control a fight with his strength.
Hold on. I can feel it. I feel it coming. Oh my goodness.
Look, I'm not saying that Ben Askren's going to go out there and get knocked out, because I don't see Jake Paul. I don't see him as a professional fighter. He's taking it serious because he fought Nate Robinson, but you can see some of the punches that he threw. He did have some good counters against Nate Robinson, where Nate Robinson, he's a novice at fighting, obviously, because he had never, fought before then. He just got paid well to go out there and do it. Ben Askren has fought before, but I think the most interesting thing is that he has always controlled the fight with his wrestling. He's never had to control the fight with his boxing, any type of striking realm whatsoever that wasn't ground and pound. And there was actually a statistic that I seen earlier, and it had said that Ben Askren had only landed 63 significant strikes in his career. In his career, he has landed 63 significant strikes. That is over 20 professional fights, and he landed 63. And just to put it into perspective, Habib landed 70 against the Conor McGregor in their fight alone. So that's just to put it into perspective there. So Ben Askren has not controlled a fight with his boxing, with his striking, and I think it's actually going to be very interesting to see. Jake Paul is also a novice at boxing, but you can make the same argument that Ben Askren is a novice at boxing. So I'm really interested to see how this fight is actually going to unfold. Yeah, it's one of those it's one of the nasty fights, and it's one of those, as Brian Campbell might say, the gas station hot dog type fight. But you know what? I'm taking it in. I'm in. He's got my interest. The Nate Robinson fight, I wasn't really too much interested in because I know Nate Robinson didn't fight. But now Jake Paul started to dip his toe a little bit into the fighting the actual fighters now. So I'm actually really interested to see how this goes.
I can't believe that you think that this is going to go this way. I think it's going to be competitive. So I don't want everybody to think that I think Ben Askren is going to get smoked. But I also don't think that Jake Paul is going to get smoked either, because Ben Askren is – look, let's just
be blunt about it. He's not a striker. He's not. He's a wrestler.
Okay.
His striking is, if you've seen some of his highlights, if you watch the spinning back fist he tried against Damian Maia, I think people will know that, this dude is not a striker at all. Like, if he cannot wrestle, he's not going to be able to control the fight. So I think just from that standpoint, it makes it a little more interesting. And Jake Paul's getting an actual professional fighter to fight him.
Just the credit that Askren is getting just is blowing my mind. People are giving him zero credit. They all think that he's going to go in there and just get slept in the first round. You got to look at it like this. At minimum, Ben Askren has been training boxing how long? At least 10 years now, right?
Something like that, but I
wouldn't
say that
so
hardcore.
So let's just take the names off of it. You have an Olympic caliber a wrestler that has been training striking for 10 years, and then you have a athletic random guy that has now been training boxing for what, 3 or 4 years, something like that. All signs point toward Ben Askren should win this fight if he doesn't get knocked out. That's all I'm saying. They are giving him zero credit. Everyone just says that he's going to go in there and just get straight just knocked out. If I can put money on this fight, I will put money on Ben Askren to win this fight, because this dude isn't a fighter. This dude has knocked out Nate Robinson that looked like he thought Jake Paul was going to stand there like a heavy bag. His only training was on a heavy bag. There's no way Nate Robinson has ever sparred in his life. There's no way, because you don't come at someone like that. There's no way he trained for that fight, and it showed. I do believe that Ben Askren has more skills, way more skills in striking than Nate Robinson had. That being said, I just can't believe that people are giving Ben Askren zero credit like this. The funky one himself.
It has a lot to do with that Damian Maia fight, man. That lasting impression that he left on us, we were all excited to see him coming to the UFC. And I think even in the Robbie Lawler fight, I don't think he landed a strike in that fight at all. He ended up getting the bulldog choke.
He didn't need one, okay?
What did he do to win the fight?
He was going to pop Robbie Lawler's head off.
Yes, but he did not do it with the striking. Robbie Lawler also slammed him on his head and almost ended up TKOing him before he ended up surviving, which credit to Askren. He was taking some shots there. But I just think as far as the striking goes, Ben might have been training it for the last last decade or so. But has he really had to use it? I mean, if you go back into his fights, like I said, I seen the stat earlier with 63 significant strikes for over 20 professional fights. I mean, that's crazy low to think that someone has only landed that amount of fights or that amount of strikes with that number of fights. So I think that's what makes it a little bit more interesting, is that Ben's just not a boxer, not a striker at all. And I know that Jake Paul, he's been training the last 2 or 3 years or so, but Ben Askren is also going into Jake Paul's realm, something that Jake Paul is, I think, a lot more comfortable with than Ben is. Not to say that Ben isn't comfortable with striking, but Ben is actually taking the bigger risk here, because he's actually going into boxing. Jake's not coming into MMA. If Jake was coming to MMA, it wouldn't even be a question in my mind, because I say Askren would take him down, control him, get some ground and pound, probably get a rear naked choke or something like that, because Jake Paul doesn't want to keep getting hit in the face. But now that the fight has to be standing at all times, it makes it a little bit more interesting. I can't lie. Man, I cannot do the funky one like that. I'm going for Ben Askren. I think that he gets it done here. I'm just going to be honest. Here in the past few like weeks, I have been seeing like a lot more Askren interviews and such, which makes sense. But he actually said in his like last two UFC fights that he was barely able to train at all due to his hip like just bothering him so bad. So I'm curious to see how Ben Askren looks after getting like the recent hip surgery. What does his mobility look like? And who knows,
Askren might come out there and throw an overhand right hook and starch Jake Paul. How how hilarious would that mean? I'm not saying that is going to happen. I do believe Ben Askren gets it done at a decision. But how crazy would it be if Ben Askren came out there and here comes Jake Paul with his Jorge trained like running uppercut thing, and he just stepped back and just overhand righted Jake Paul and just wrecked him right there. I would be like, yeah! I would be the happiest person on the face of this earth, so we could quit hearing about Jake Paul fighting the fighters that we care about.
Askren steps back and hits him with a spinning back fist and knocks him out with the first one. So, yeah, I would love to see that.
Anyway, a crazy fight. I can't say an interesting fight. A fight that I really don't care about. I just want to see Ben Askren shut up Jake Paul. But anyway, that is going to be all for that topic, Dorian. So lastly, we are going to move along to just the recent fight news, the fights that got announced. So just off the top of my head, I can think of Paulo Costa versus Robert Whittaker. I can think of Marvin Vettori versus Darren Till. And I can think that maybe Zhang Weili versus Rose is also kind of in the talks. Anything else off the top of your head?
I can't think of any more off the top of my head. That's what I was trying to think of. But those were kind of the main three that I had. And I know that they had already confirmed the Stipe Miocic versus Ngannou.
Yeah.
And those types of fights. But yeah, the ones that really stood out to me were those three in particular.
Okay, so which one of those do you want to talk about, I guess, like, at first?
Well, I think the one that's kind of the most interesting, and we were kind of talking about it a couple of weeks ago when we were doing our champions prediction, was Rose Namajunas versus Zhang Weili. And I think that it actually surprised me that they were in discussions for it, because I know that Dana said after Rose's last fight against Jessica Andrade that she wasn't really feeling it as far as fighting for a title. And I know that Rose came out and immediately put down those comments and said that, she never said anything like that she was ready for a title fight. She just got through a war with Jessica Andrade and would like some time for recovery before she would like to go back out there and probably get into another war with Zhang Weili. And I think as far as challenges, I think Rose is going to be the fighter that presents the most challenges for Zhang Weili, because I think although Joanna is probably an overall better striker, I think Joanna's a little more flat-foot, so that let Zhang Weili land a few more significant strikes to be able to win the fight in the judges' eyes. But I think with Rose is very good about not getting hit nearly as much as Joanna is. She's a little more light on her feet. She's a very good boxer. And I think Zhang Weili, she took a lot of shots from Joanna in that last fight. Rose has power to drop you and possibly get you out of there. And she has enough skills on the ground to where if she gets that fight to the ground, I think she could possibly end up getting some type of rear naked choke, or maybe just some good control on the ground and try to ride out a few rounds herself. So I think early thoughts, I liked Rose in the fight. But just as far as stylistically, I think there's not a better matchup within that division, or honestly, it's one of the better title fights that you can actually make. Women's strawweight is absolutely loaded. That division is loaded as far as like the top 10. I mean, those women are killers, and I really like that division. And I think what a better way to kind of celebrate how great the division is than having a fight with Zhang Weili and Rose Namajunas.
A fight that I am definitely looking forward to. I'm glad it's actually going to happen. I wasn't sure I guess we don't know if it's going to happen yet. Like, I wasn't sure if it was even going to be, like, talked about at all. So I'm actually glad that they're talking about it, and it is maybe going to happen. So that's pretty cool. A fight that I want to talk about is one that is announced. Paulo Costa versus Robert Whittaker. I do think that they throw an interim championship on this. I don't see why they wouldn't. I don't think he's going to come back to fight like the 185 for how long now, because he's going up to fight Jan, and is he going to have to drop back down to fight any other way, or is he going to move right on up to fight John Jones at heavyweight? What is he going to do? That is the fight that I am looking forward to. So Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa. How does Paulo Costa look after just getting, I don't even know what to say, completely destroyed by Izzy? And then Rob looked fantastic in his last two fights. That is a fight that I can't wait to see. What are your thoughts on that fight?
And man, one thing I want people to start doing is putting respect on Robert Whittaker's name. I feel like because he lost to Izzy kind of decidedly that people just has written him off as not that great of a fighter. But man, the killers that Robert Whittaker has had to fight, he's fought Yoel Romero twice. He's fought Jacare Souza. He's fought Darren Till. He's fought Jerry Cannonier. I mean, the dude was undefeated in the weight class before he lost to Izzy, and he still hasn't lost a fight in the division since. So ever since he's made his move up from welterweight to 185, he's been the best 185er out there, and now he's the best 185er outside of Israel Adesanya. And it's just stacking up his resume even more as one of the greats in that division because he's fighting top contender after top contender. So he fought Jerry Cannonier, and then he ended up fighting, or he fought Darren Till before he ended up fighting Jerry Cannonier, and now he's fighting Paulo Costa. So it's like you're fighting literally the top guys within that top five of that division. And I'm also curious to see where Costa is coming from off of his performance against Adesanya, because he really got dominated in that fight. He can say what he wants about injuries or whatever, but when he was in the octagon, he was doing a lot of dancing, he was doing a lot of mocking, and then when Izzy put it on him, all of a sudden that's when he said he had injuries and things going into the fight. Of course, I think a lot of it's just fighter talk, just because I think he lost a little bit of sense of his pride getting dominated the way he did, but he's a very ferocious fighter, and he was always that way before he fought Adesanya. So I'm wondering if Adesanya stylistically made him fight like that, or if maybe something has changed with Paulo Costa. So I'm curious to see where he's at as well.
Cool. So definitely two fights that me and you are looking forward to this upcoming year. They are in the talks, or it has been announced. So we have about 10 minutes or so left. Any other news that you want to talk about, or anything of that nature?
Hey, so I want to talk about a couple things. I know that Cody Garbrandt has been calling out Jose Aldo, and I know that TJ Dillashaw has been calling out Jose Aldo. I wonder what that's about, because I know that Jose Aldo had called out TJ Dillashaw initially, and I think a lot of people like that fight, and it seemed like after that, Cody Garbrandt had started calling out Jose Aldo, saying that he wanted that fight instead of going down to 125. Now, he said in a recent interview that he would want to go back down to 125 once Figueiredo and Moreno fought one another, but I just thought it was awfully curious that Cody Garbrandt went for the call out of Jose Aldo after Jose Aldo has already called out TJ Dillashaw. So it almost feels like that Cody Garbrandt is trying to get back in there and see if he could snub TJ in some type of way. And one of the things I'm actually interested in is I've seen where Peter Yan, he had said in an interview recently where he wants to defend his title against Aljamain Sterling, and he wants his next fight after that to be against TJ Dillashaw. So I'm wondering if they're going to hold out, if they're going to keep TJ on ice, because you got to remember, he's been eligible since, I believe, the middle of the month. Mm-hmm. What was it, January 18th?
The 21st or something like that, I think.
Yeah, with the 18th, the 21st, something around that date. So he's eligible to fight now. So I would think that there would be a lot more news circling about his next fight. So I think with them kind of being a little hush-hush about it, Peter Yan has already said that he wants to fight TJ Dillashaw after his fight with Aljamain Sterling. So I'm curious to see, as I might have predicted, which we don't know for sure just yet, but at least that TJ Dillashaw might end up getting a title shot coming off of his 2-year suspension. And I'm really curious to see if the UFC is actually going to go that route, just because with TJ's name in that division. He's still, the last time we seen him, he was at the top of the division. So I'm really curious to see him, to see if he is still at the top of the division. The new crop is here as far as the young talent, but I would love to see what TJ can do against those guys. And I just love the storyline of coming off a 2-year suspension and getting a title shot immediately. So I'm curious to see how, all of these things unfold in the Bantamweight division as well.
So that... I think they're calling Jose Aldo out simply because he just now fought for the title and then fought who they thought the new upcoming talent was in Chito Vera and just put a clinic on Chito Vera. Didn't stand a chance against Jose Aldo. So I think that being said, Jose Aldo showed that he's at the top of the division, and so everyone is going to call out Jose Aldo simply because Peter Yan already has a fight against Aljamain Sterling. That's the next best thing is Jose Aldo. So he is the one that everyone is going to be gunning for and also yelling his name and everything like that.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense because Aldo's got a big name and Cody. I know that he had wanted to go down to 125, which I really hope he doesn't. I really want him to learn his lesson from TJ going down to that weight class, and I know that Cody said he doesn't have as much mass on his body, so he can make it a little bit easier, but I would really like for him to learn from TJ and not go down. And I actually really like that matchup if TJ is to fight for the title. If Cody and Jose is to fight, I really like that fight stylistically as well.
We all know what happens every Cody Garbrandt fight. It is a right hook contest until someone falls down. So that is going to be all of the fight news for today. Before we get off here, I just want to let everyone know I finally broke down and ordered the PlayStation 5 so I could play UFC 4 with this man right here. I have the new Xbox, but he has the PlayStation 5, so I broke down and I got it. I have both new systems now. So I'll be playing UFC with this man, and at some point we'll probably do some kind of screen recording and upload who wins these fights. But that is the plan for the channel. We will let you guys know. Anything that you want to say before we get out of here, Dorian?
Yeah, good pod today.
Yeah, man. So it's
really enjoyed today's talk.
It's been a week since we talked, so I'm glad we just got to say a few things. We will be back Wednesday to talk about this weekend's upcoming fights. I'm gonna leave that in there just because it's the end and it'll be perfect. But that is gonna be all for this time, guys. Make sure that you like this video if you enjoyed it, and once again, subscribe to the channel. Help us out, help us grow. I am Matt Anderson. Dorian Rose is over here. That is all for this time, guys. Stay golden. We'll catch you next time.